There we go. All right, the recording is started. All right, everyone, welcome to this session on Microsoft open sourcing their Power BI apps and what that means, get a little bit of differentiating perspectives based on our different roles. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping things. If anyone has any questions at any time, feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions. You know, we want this to be a very dynamic, organic discussion. So if you have questions, let's hear them. Feel free to also use the chat if you don't feel like unmuting yourself. And if you would like to reference this later in the future, it will be posted on the Not a Pickle YouTube. And also possibly one of these guys' YouTube as well. So maybe a few different places. But yeah, that being said, welcome. We'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Savannah Dill. I am a BI analyst at the TM group. So what that really means is I do all things fun related to reporting, specifically Power BI. In my free time, I run a blog called Not a Pickle because my last name is Dill, and I like to get people out of pickles when they get stuck. I'm also a chronic hand talker, so I will probably be doing this a lot as I talk. But yeah, so that's me. I'll move on over to David.
Hello, David Laster here. I'm honored to be on the show today. Savannah, you have gotten me out of many a pickle over the years, and to be able to have an open source Power BI conversation kind of live is really kind of a treat, so thank you. David Laster, I'm the Director of Software Solutions. Company's name is Greybock. We're just north of the Boston, Massachusetts area, and I've been here in the Boston area about 25 years. Been working for a couple different partners, but I'm really passionate about financial reporting and analytics. My background is reporting, actually, for Dynamics GP primarily. But when Power BI came out, that became something I got really excited and interested in. And then with Business Central as well, you know, obviously being a tremendous source of information for my ERP customers. And moving them from GP to VC, it creates some really awesome conversations. And this tool that we get to play with is adding a little bit of fuel to that fire. So it's awesome to be here. Thanks, Savannah.
Yeah. Marcel?
And I'm Marcel Chabot. I'm the development practice manager over here at the TM group. I have the privilege of working with Savannah on a lot of projects and a lot of BI stuff. My main role is Code Monkey Extreme. I do a lot of custom development. I customize APIs and come out of the GP world, a bit like David did. David's actually in my backyard, almost. We could hook up his shed and drag him over here if we wanted. And over here in the New England area. And it's a real privilege to be on and being able to talk about some of the cool stuff. I think David would agree, coming out of the GP world and into the Business Central world, where we can do real transformative customizations, where things like Power BI and the Power Platform can be very impactful, can have that native experience, is really a big difference and a differentiator in how we do business today versus how we did it back in the GP land. And it's a lot of fun to have these tools and these features really available, and the pace in which it's changing and growing is fantastic. By the time we finish this hour-and-a-half presentation, there'll be 3 new features. We'll be wrong about 2 of the things we discussed, and Kenny, wherever he is going to give Savannah a call and tell her about something else that she didn't even know about that he hasn't released yet. So it's great. I enjoy this opportunity to share this tech with everybody in this fast-paced world we're in.
Yeah, so a little bit kind of expanding on that, Marcel, you kind of mentioned the journey of like reporting coming from GP to BC. I've only been in the dynamic space for 5 years now, and Power BI is actually turning 10 this year. Mm-hmm. So by the time I was just beginning, I didn't even know what Power BI was. You know, there'd already been so many incredible things happen. As far as reporting goes, you had the dynamic activity, you had more of a WYSIWYG kind of, software that you can drag and drop these visuals, your data. It became very like user friendly. And I imagine, prior to 10 years ago, that wasn't always the case. And you guys have probably seen like reporting change a lot over the years as far as, what was then and what is now.
Yeah, coming out of big RDLCs or RDL reporting for GP, jet reports, and things that were meant to go to paper. And now to something that's never meant to go to paper. It's meant to be live, something that's organic, that you look at, you understand, you act, and then you move on. There's no need for that static piece. And it's really interesting to watch companies adopt that change from the I get my printouts once a month to I get my actionable items every morning, and then I go. And those items are changing, and we're watching them change. It's such a different paradigm. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. To even tap on that, Marcel, is, the ability to just set up alerts on top of that, so that when something happens, you get notified. It's real time, and it's all, part of what Power BI offers, and what these dashboards, that Microsoft has distributed now for Power BI give us. So now that they're open source, that gives us the ability to customize, add to, but also now set up notifications and alerts based on some of their models, but are important information. So it's just fascinating how quickly we can put this out there.
Yeah, and then you have things like Copilot that are being integrated into every single Microsoft application, including Power BI. If you're one of the few lucky ones on this call to have access to Copilot for Power BI, I envy you. But we can do a lot of cool things with that too, and I expect as time goes on, that will become a little bit more accessible for many users. So we've heard the phrase open source now for, we've heard it. We've seen it on LinkedIn. We've said it in this call a few times. Like, what does open source mean?
Well, I can hop right in. They have published for everyone to download all of the source code behind these reports. If you don't like the color scheme, if you don't like a calculation, if something's not pertinent to the way you do business, they're accessible to download. And I'm going to throw the link to the GitHub right into the chat. It's within the BC Tech samples for Power BI, Power BI 26, the PBI 26 apps. We can find in there the pieces that we can download for that. And I can even share my screen.
I was just going to say, I was just going to go ahead and share.
Savannah's got it up.
I beat you to
So if you go to that link, you can download these PIBX files, and they are the new reports.
Yep.
And they're there for you to do what you want.
Yep. So you just click on it, and then click on this little download button here, and that will allow you to download what is currently open sourced. Currently, as far as open sourcing goes, there are 3 apps or reports that are open source. There's finance, inventory evaluation, and inventory. What we know so far is that this was kind of the first wave, with more / the rest to follow later this year. Microsoft did just release quite a few updates to these apps, and we'll touch on that here in a minute. Also, today we will be focusing primarily on the finance app. We're going to pick on it a little bit, show the back end, and kind of just give some like general thoughts related to what we think, from a BI perspective, a BC perspective, and a development perspective. Not all of these conversations will be applicable to everyone here, but, at least it's a good starting point. So I think it'd be worthwhile to talk about the apps as they are currently, without open sourcing them. Just what you see is what you get, download, install, and go. David, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure can. There's they're in a transitional phase right now, moving from really the closed mount to the open source version of these reports, it feels like. So they have also incorporated a number of changes. So as Business Central is updating, so are the Power BI reports. So there comes a time when if you might have dipped your toe in the water with the first draft, the first version of it, it's time to now, download and work on the second version of the report. There's some additional changes to it. I was starting to read into it a little bit this week. It's great that there are some new enhancements and changes. I do have, thoughts about the financial report itself. I've probably got most of my experience and my exploration within the financial Power BI app because it touches more than just GL, right? It touches sales in terms of the customer ledger entries and payables ledger entries as well. So it does offer some breadth to more than just that item. Let me share my screen if I can real quick. One other way you're talking about Marcel is, whoops, let me change this guy. This guy, here it is. So another way to get the open source app I noticed also out there is to go out to the report. In the older version of the report, to download this file is grayed out. You can't do that. The property on the new model is different now. You can actually download this file from after deploying the new 26.2 apps, and then that's visually available to you essentially within your workspace. So I've got an example where I deployed the finance app here just out of the box, of course. I was able to essentially copy the finance app, save a copy over so I can preserve, what was there in terms of the PBIX file out of the box. I created a renumbering, a renaming, and then I wanted to start customizing a little bit. And when my model changed, it updated and gave me an updated semantic model out here. So this is, I guess, kind of behind the scenes, right, with the app itself. This is really after pulling it down and deploying it into a workspace. So this is where I was really starting to get started doing some comparisons down there, right?
Yeah. David, I'm going to steal your screen for a second. Before we talk about customizing, I think it's important to first discuss how to get these apps. Some of you in this call may not have the apps installed, and you may not know what apps are currently available. So right now, there are 7 Business Central apps available for Power BI. And I'm probably going to forget one while I name this list off, but it's finance, sales, purchasing, inventory valuation, sustainability, and subscription billing. There we go. I got them all.
Yeah.
So there's 7 different apps. And with these apps, with the newest version, there are a few things to consider. So first, let's talk about requirements. The first requirement is you must have a Power BI Pro license to access these. You can't just, go in, download, and share within your organization. You have to have the Power BI Pro license at a minimum. The second thing is going to be considering what version of Business Central you're on. So right now there's a few of these apps out here, and I'll put this in the chat, but essentially if you're on version 26.2 or higher, there is some updates regarding those. If you're anywhere from 25.2 to 26.1, you'll want these versions. You can use these links here, which I'll put in the chat to make it easy to download. But the other way that you can do it is go into powerbi.com. And from here, I'm on my homepage. I'll go to apps on the left-hand side. And I already have some of these installed, but just for funsies, I'll go ahead and show you. Go to Get Apps. And this is the app source experience that's embedded within Power BI service. So from here, what you can do is a few different things. At first, I was just typing in Business Central, and that's how I was finding all of the apps. And then I was looking at the individual logos. The issue I had initially with these reports is the naming conventions were not very friendly. They all said Dynamics 365, Business Central, Finance, or Sales or Purchasing, whatever. And as you can kind of see, there's still some of these out here. And those were considered the older versions, so less than 26.2. If you are on version 26.2 or higher, the best way that I found to find the correct app, if you're not using the links, is just typing in 26.2 in the search bar, and it will show you the newest iteration of these apps. And now they also have the friendly naming convention here. So instead of saying Dynamics 365 Business Central Finance, it just says Finance Power BI app for Business Central. To download, use the link in the chat or search and click, and then you will hit get it now and install. I already have these installed, so I'm not going to reinstall them. But once you do have them installed, you're going to get two different things. The first thing is you will, on your apps page, you will see them listed here once they install. What Power BI will also do is it will create a workspace for you based on that app. So each of these apps are going to be individual workspaces. And I think that's really great for departmentalizing your workspaces within Service. It helps you stay organized. It helps you share across your organization depending on functional role of employees. So once you have these apps downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and click into, I don't have Finance downloaded. All right, I'll do that. I'll click into Sales because I'm partial to Sales. I think someone may have messed up my workspaces. Okay, inventory evaluation it is. Typically, there'll be a report and a semantic model. Like David was saying, if you want to download what is considered open source, you can open the file, go to File and Download, and you can download from here, or you can go to the GitHub like Marcel showed. When connecting to these reports, the first thing you'll see is your standard pages. This all has sample data. The one thing that you want to do is go to connect your data, and it will ask for company and environment information. You can find this information by going into Business Central and searching Power BI connector setup. And here I would recommend you copy and paste the environment and company. One thing to note is in Business Central, it says environment and then company. And then in Power BI, it says company and then environment. So just make sure you're pasting the right thing in the right place or it will not work. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste, hit next, and then it will ask you for your credentials. Going to sign in. And then you'll get a little spinny wheel up here. Yep, see, and it is now refreshing. Let's talk a little bit now about what we like and what we don't like. Do either of you have any, like thoughts on what you like and what you don't like? I definitely have some thoughts here related to just what you get out of the box. And this doesn't have to be just the inventory. It can be finance or sales or whatever.
I definitely have some observations, especially on the financial ones.
You do.
A little bit. It's all in actually good. It's actually being astute, I think, and trying to really make sure that what you're getting in the model is really reflective of what your data is, because you're looking at a lot of pictures and lists of things, but are you getting the full list of information? And a lot of these reports go back to mapping the chart of accounts from the Power BI model to the categories and subcategories in your chart of accounts. So in theory, that's great. And in practice, it seems to be working. And I like what that does for the models themselves for creating measures. It helps us create the KPIs you'll see them obviously in the model when you get there. I think the first round was a pretty good start. I liked that it was GL and AR and AP. So, thumbs up for having, a nice, one-stop shop dashboard for finance. I'd like to see some more sales invoices, which is a great opportunity for extending this, is to bring in some sales invoicing, not just the accounts receivable data through the model. On the purchasing side, it might be good to have some purchase order information related to those expenses. So, in terms of that, I thought it was, really a good start. I've worked with our team at Greyvoc pretty much everywhere we can to get this into the customer's hands as quickly as possible. With the understanding that, it's one per company, right? So if you did have to download a second finance report and point it to company number 2, each report will have its own naming convention that tells the user pretty clearly which company that the report is pointing to. But some comments that I've had, when you look at like the payables aging is kind of nice, either the receivables or the payables aging. It's a nice bit of a dashboard here. It's got some charts and things. I think go to the receivables one next, I think, is the one that's a little weird. One of them was doing an aging by, maybe they fixed this in the 26.2. It was aging by payment terms, and I just thought that was a little weird. It wasn't aging by customer. So that was an initial observation. Initially also, and even in this version, it still has, if you go like say to the income statement page, out of the box, I think the income statement sorts descending instead of ascending. So I usually would go in now in the open source, right? Sort it ascending, save and publish that back out. But generally, I thought, it's got a lot of good promise in terms of good starter dashboards. A lot of people are new to Power BI, right? This is a great, really pretty straightforward to use tool within Business Central. It's pretty darn flexible in terms of drilling into, drilling through, expanding, popping on its own window, applying filter after filter, including, excluding. There's a lot of reporting analytics that go with deploying it out of Business Central. So I like that in terms of the finance report itself. Yeah. I started to create it. Go ahead, Marcel.
I was just saying, from a development standpoint, there is a neat challenge here. Taking a little step backwards is since each of the concepts are their own report, there's 7 of them. That is 7 semantic models, and they do have a significant amount of overlap between some of them, which means that storage can be something you want to watch out for. If you install them all, it's not very lean on the data storage due to that overlap. Inventory evaluation has some overlap with some of the other reports, and that's going to cause a bit of, I don't want to say data bloat. That sounds bad, but it consumes a bit more space. So as you're looking at the reports, you're going to want to be a little picky about which ones you put in. Make sure you're getting your value and you're using them. Because if you get hooked on Power BI, which is really easy to do, you can use up a lot of data really quick. And semantic model storage is a cost component of Power BI. And you want to keep an eye on that. So as you're looking at all these shiny reports, uninstall the ones that don't mean anything to you. You won't hurt their feelings. They're just code. And focus on the ones that bring the most value to your company and start expanding and building off of those and have fun with them. But just know that the models, each time you install them, you're going to install a new model. That model is going to pull all the data pertinent to it, even if that data is in another report already.
Yeah, with a Power BI Pro license, the maximum data set size is 1 gigabyte, and with Premium, it's 10 gigabytes. Of course, you can switch data set storage formats, but because this is an app with its own API call, so I'm not quite sure how that would go. Also, I'm not really sure if this is an issue with Business Central anymore, but I know when working with reports in the past, I've had clients just refresh everything all at once, and it almost seemed like it seized Business Central up a bit. I'm not sure if that's kind of a thing anymore. Have either of you experienced that?
Well, it's going to be less likely with the Power BI reports. A lot of that happens with the initial run of Power BI, where people were using the OData data sets, which were tied to the pages, and were read-write APIs, which caused table locks. And if you went really crazy there, you could cause Business Central to just kind of give up on life by pulling all the data and causing table locks everywhere. These Power BI reports come out of API queries, and queries are read-only, and they come off of a copy of your BC database. So they're not coming off of the live database. They're coming off a database that lags by a couple seconds to production, which no one's really going to notice, a couple second lag. But it also means that you're not going to lock up your Power BI with the refreshes, though there is a max. David, have you ever hit the max number of API calls in a rolling 20-minute? I haven't been able to do
not
it.
knowingly.
There is a cap. I haven't hit it yet. It's very generous.
Yeah.
But it's there. So I don't know if anyone else has found it. You'll get a 40 something error when it says, I think 412, something that you've gone too fast. Calm down. But I haven't seen that one yet. But it's there somewhere.
I've not experienced that either. A lot of when you deploy the reports out of the box, I think the default is to set it to refresh once a day. So unless you go back in afterwards and dial that way up, it can do its refreshing off of hours. Some folks want to have it every hour, every couple of hours. That's fine. With your license, you'll get up to 8, but you can have it refreshed during the daytime, so it's as fresh as it could possibly be. Which is helpful, right? If you're in Business Central and you go in and out of your role center, and your role center updates, your Power BI report should be pretty fresh too. So it should reflect that within whatever cadence you set for refreshing.
But that is an important point, that your role center refreshes every time you hop in and out of it. But your Power BI dashboards will refresh at whatever cadence they are set to refresh at. So your role center will be faster single item data points than your Power BI, but your Power BI will have more intelligence behind it. So again, balance what you need. Fast single data points, that's a great use of the role center. Looking at how things are going during the course of the day, and it updates every 2 hours, that's a great thing for a Power BI.
Yeah, and I think most people, you won't have the need to be in a Power BI report 24/7. Usually you check it a few times a day, check on the health and see what's going on at a glance. As far as what I think of these apps, like David said, I think they are an excellent tool for individuals and organizations to get started with Power BI. Because if it is very easy to, get started, install, connect, and you're off to the races. That being said, the way that these data models are constructed, and we'll show that here in a bit, is not every visual is going to be applicable to every organization. And you're going to get that with every single type of canned report. And, I think that's where open sourcing is really going to shine, because you have a great foundation that you can then build upon. Also, with open sourcing, some qualms I have with these reports, I guess, is there's no slicers. I love slicing my data, and you have to use the filters. Go ahead and share again. You have all these filters on all of these reports on the right-hand side here, and this is kind of how you slice your data. Whereas when I typically build Power BI reports, I will add slicers on page, and those are going to be the most applicable things. Like, for example, on this finance page, I would really love to slice by salesperson or customer or a date range. You know, these are all kind of things that I would like to be front and center. They're on the page. I don't have to scroll through this list of things to find what I want, if it's even there. So I think that is one of my biggest gripes with these so far, outside of it being, you know, is it going to be relevant or not? It's hard to say. It depends on how your Business Central is set up. And with Business Central being such a highly customizable like ERP, you may not. Even some of the sample data, going back to AR, you know, we're missing some sample data here, which obviously you can't have everything, but because it's sample, I would kind of expect a little bit more. One thing I do really enjoy about these apps is a lot of these have linked backends. So I'll show it in the model, but here on the AR, if you click on any of these values with like an underscore under it, not connected correctly, but I'm using sample data. Typically, once you get connected, you know, you would have your balance here, and that would then link to Business Central. So when you click on it, it would open up this customer, and you could see everything related to that balance. So I think that's really nice. Something else that I don't always particularly enjoy with these is the amount of
Couples.
yes.
Yeah.
And some of them are the same. Like these three going downwards are all they're all the same. I think there could be some cleanup there as far as those go. But some other features. David, you kind of mentioned this. I think it's important to utilize Power BI service for what it gives, because there's so many features hidden within Power BI service that many people aren't using. You know, we talked about Copilot a little bit. Unfortunately for me, womp womp, I don't have it. But you know, some people do. Outside of Copilot, there's also a few other features such as subscribe or alerts, which David, you had mentioned. Subscribing to a report allows it to email on a certain cadence. It will send a link to whichever individual at whatever cadence, and then it gives them a link to click into and open their report. There's also other things such as embedding within PowerPoint and embedding within Teams. I think those are two features that not a lot of people know about and utilize, but it is a nice user experience and quality of life kind of perk. And I haven't done this in a while, but also this explore feature. So I haven't tried this actually. Interesting. So the finance app isn't completely open source, but if you use Explore, it looks like you have access to the back end. And this is kind of like analyze mode in Business Central, where you can kind of do ad hoc analysis and kind of look at your data in interesting ways. So that's kind of a treat I'll have to explore a little bit later.
How about configuring them inside Business Central?
Yeah, that's great question. Do either of you want to share and kind of show that?
I can pop mine up.
Yeah.
All right. See on the role center, I've got my Power BI report already down here. This is one that's already been essentially pointed to. This is the finance app. It just happens to be a page in the app that that I created and then republished. But there's really two pages out here for the Power BI connector. The Power BI connector setup, which is usually a one-time thing that you're going to want to go into and set up, at least for the finance app. You might come back later and add the sales app or add the inventory app, you'll want to come back because this essentially holds the pointers and a couple of parameters that are needed by the report. So thankfully, it's really just a one-stop shop when you get in here, right? And the fast tabs, I think Savannah showed earlier that you know, your environment as well as the company name that the one app is pointing to. So it's really a one-for-one piece there. The Power BI account categories, this is what I was mentioning earlier, is especially for the financial one, the real linkage between elements of the model as well as some of the KPIs are not driven on account numbers. They're driven based off of categories. So mapping these out here, and if they don't look right, you know, fix it, come back, remap and resync. But this is something that you really want to start with at the beginning of the finance app. And you know, every good Power BI report needs a solid date table to start with. This is the configuration for when you build that date table. It automatically is going to pick up your accounting periods as a starting point. If you wanted to essentially have a smaller date table, you certainly could do that. Ultimately, again, that becomes a parameter out there. And then each of the 7 reports that Savannah was mentioning, then go down the list right here in terms of your setups. The finance one, the first really one that you would do is probably the finance one. You're going to point it out to and see any of the workspaces that are out there. And I had recently renamed one. This one, I think, is the one for the 2025. Yep. Oh, I didn't want to switch that over. Let me put this back. But I've got a couple different versions of the report. Remember, the out of the box one, as well as a copy that I monkeyed around with and published back out. So this finance report app then has some sections to it. So when you're getting the refresh, there are a couple of pages that have ledger entries. There's general ledger entry pages and budget entries on the left. And then on my right here, I've got customer as well as vendor ledger entries. So, you know, we're talking earlier about performance and refresh. Some of it's how much data do you want to have available, because, you know, this will determine how much information becomes part of that refresh as well. So the rest of the reports follow suit the same way down. I did make a mistake once, for what it's worth. I had to go in and fix it. I was in one of these sections and I picked the wrong report and I wasn't able to fix it. So ultimately I went in and did a config package and blew it out to fix it. But I couldn't just wipe it out. I could switch it to something else, but I couldn't wipe it out to essentially tell Business Central, hey, you know, there's no pointer here. Don't go looking or helping people find that report. And then when you get to your home page and hit select report, it gives you a list of whatever's available for you to choose from. Like I said, you can pin it down to your home page. I've got this one page essentially pinned right here. You can have up to 3 of these. It appears so far 3 Power BI reports on a page on your role center. I couldn't get more than 4 or more than 3. So if anybody's able to do that, let me know. But again, Marcel is saying you go to your role center a lot. So it is one of the, depending on how much is there, it might be the longest running page, you know, in your environment if everybody pins a lot of pointers and things down there. So
it can be very costly to load a lot of Power BI on the screen. You can be waiting quite some time.
Yeah, very true.
But that gets them all loaded.
Yep.
So what happens, David, when you decide to make your own copy, and then Microsoft decides that they want to do something better, or they want to improve the report? I'm gonna put improve in quotes because we've had some improvements before that are not as great. I see you made a mine copy. What would have happened if you just edited the one they gave you?
Didn't experiment with that yet. I imagine you're going to get completely overwritten because you're getting a completely new updated model.
Oh yeah, you get wiped out.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm in the comparison mode right now. So thankfully you can deploy reports to a new workspace. So you can compare old workspace, new workspace, and maybe make sure that you've got the critical pieces rebuilt once you move to the new model. Maybe you don't need to move to the new model because what it's giving you doesn't help you all that much. So you can use your old model. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't be able to use your old model. But if they give you a new one, you know, just accept it. It's going to happen.
And that's one of the nice things in that you can make a copy and you can live off that copy. There is no reason to live on the cutting edge unless it happens to bring something that you are missing in your implementation. If it
Mhm.
does everything you want, don't feel obligated to always move to the latest.
Yeah.
It's your data. If you're getting your answers from your data and the new models changes don't fix something, don't upgrade. You've got what you need and enjoy that. Um, the fear of missing out, FOMO, it shouldn't be a thing that drives your data choices. If you need help, you can always bring it into a new one, a new workspace, look at what changed, and then delete it if it's not better. If it is better, we migrate your changes to the new model to get caught up with anything that you had that was unique, and then you live off the new one. But you're under no obligation to be on the latest all the time.
Yep.
I can hear Kenny crying though.
I know. One of the common requests I've had from customers so far, you're on it right here, is this financial overview page
Mhm.
where you don't have any days payable outstanding, but there's a days sales inventory, right? There's a days sales outstanding. So some customers have looked at this and said, okay, this looks great, but I don't have X, or I don't have Y, or I don't have Z. If you could clean that up by simply removing that measure from that tile, that would be appealing to them. So that is some feedback we've had so far from customers. I don't have inventory. I don't want that there. So that drives us to now use the open source for finance reports and go clean it up a little bit. What's that going to do? Drive user adoption, make them actually pay more attention to what they do have for Power BI, maybe come up with other ways and new needs for the dashboard, or maybe other reporting tools that can help them.
Yeah. And, that's kind of where making copies come in, at least now with the finance, what you see is what you get with the data model. But if you ever want to edit a aesthetic or visual perspective of a report because you don't use it, like I just took, I don't know what I just took out. Whenever there wasn't data, wherever it was on this card, I just
Yep.
took it out. And yeah, I can go ahead and save it. However, if you don't go and right click onto the report and make a copy, because I did this on the Microsoft version of the app, if they go ahead and make an update, it will come back, essentially. So make sure you are making copy if you would like to make edits to the base app. If it's not open source, you're not going to be able to edit this back end. You can see what's here, but you can't really add anything to the data itself. If it is one of the open source apps, you have flexibility and you can add, delete, remove, whatever you would like to do.
And the API portion that backs this is available to the development teams. You can see it in the I forget the name of the package. It's in the Power BI, the Microsoft Power BI reports extension. You can actually see all the APIs in there. I'll steal screen.
It's Marcel. It's Microsoft/analytics/v 0.5.
One second, let me do that. So what we can see in the files is I've got the Microsoft Power BI reports. I downloaded their APP package. I can do this right from BC26, and I can see all of the data queries they've created. Which one did you say you were playing with? Well, that model actually has a lot of things in it, doesn't it?
It does. Days payable outstanding, I think, was the one you removed. But there's days sales outstanding is a pretty popular one.
We'd have to look in the model to see which API call they're doing. But if I look at like one of the ones that pulls a lot is from the vendor ledger entries. This is the API. That's it. If you wanted a custom query, let's say you had customizations that added fields to your vendor ledger entries, we can do a copy paste clone of this API and be able to use it in the open source models, add in your custom fields into the models. It's a more extensive change. It requires a Business Central customization, but for a heavily customized system, they kept the APIs super lean. So they're very easy to clone and modify to be able to add more features to it in the event that your heavily customized Business Central needs an equally as customized Power BI report.
So it looks like there was a question in the chat. Sophia, you had asked, do I understand it correctly? Power BI reports reside on the Power BI workspace. Yes, they do have their own workspace, and that is where they do reside from a report and a semantic model level. Can it be exported to Excel by the user with the Power BI license and shared with the entire organization? Yeah, so if you have, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So any kind of like tabular data, like this income statement or anything like this, if you just hover over the visual and hit export data, I'll throw it on my desktop. Hasn't downloaded yet.
No, you threw it on your desktop. I can see it. It's in the
Oh,
It's the last one on the list.
You're right. I'm so used to going to downloads.
Yeah.
So yeah, make sure you know where you save it, or you'll do what I just did, even though I just said it. But yeah, so once you export it, it will export, and there you go. You have exactly all the data that was available. You know, you may have to repivot, you may have to remassage it. But you know, if that's something that you would frequently want to do, like look at Excel, you may want to not use Power BI and look at more so like Excel reporting within Business Central, because those are things that can be, you know, refreshed directly from within Excel and manipulated there. Power BI is an excellent tool, but you know, if you're looking for that like working document, then you know, maybe then you should evaluate using the BI triangle or whatever. What tool is actually going to be most beneficial for your organization. Did that answer everything, Sophia?
Yes, thank you. And again, I have a second question. If as a partner, I'm creating Power BI in my sandbox, right? So how can I ship it to the client's workspace after somehow?
So if you have something in your workspace and you want to move it to a client, I would recommend you have them install it themselves with using their domain, you know, their account. You can't really transfer from one entity to another. So they would have to install it, or you could use a service account to do so.
Oh, okay. And using this opportunity, last question, can you please elaborate a little bit more about licenses? Because we're a little bit lost. There's different levels of licenses, and I'm not sure what license as a partner do I have and what I'm allowed to do, and like some little bit about more licenses, please.
Yeah. So as a minimum for these reports, you need a Power BI Pro license. From a partner perspective, maybe David or Marcel, you want to touch a little bit on this. Typically as a partner, you know, we have delegate access into someone's BC. We can look at their BC. However, we don't have delegate access to Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
I always ask for that too, though, because of this, because we do oftentimes have to deploy, configure, administer, you know, govern. I always ask for both actually, but you do need to have, you know, that workspace admin privilege in order to essentially perform the governance on the reports themselves. But it's a Power BI Pro license at a minimum. And that's honestly, I've never needed anything more than that. But Power BI Pro is what you're going to need in order to even do that. Even if it's just for a couple of months, where you're either going through an implementation, you can do a month to month. It doesn't have to be a full year. I think it's what is it now? 14 a month, I believe now for Power BI Pro license. $14 a month if you pay annually.
And,
Wow,
and
that's
depending
really raised
on
up.
depending on if your client has other Fabric licensing, they may actually have some Pro licenses too. What is the minimum F that gets the licensing? F16
5 or E5.
Oh, E5 gets some licensing. Yeah, there's Microsoft scatters Power BI Pro licensing into a bunch of different packs, different Fabric packs, different E packs, different. I think some of the G packs have it. So yeah, you need a license that brings with it a Pro.
Thank you.
There's just a lot of them that do.
You would need an account tied to them as well. So if you're already doing an implementation, a lot of the times they'll be like service account or implementation account. Usually, even if it's temporary, you could throw a license on to that account and use that as you deploy and test and develop in Power BI.
So meaning delegated admin, if I'm using the license in my delegated admin, I have to have the domain user, right? In order to create reports and keep it for them. So in any case, I have the domain. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, this is one of the cases where we tend to do a work session and help the client to do the install. Because the GDAP, the granular delegated admin permissions don't do what we need it to do. We'd have a work session with the client. Install takes 15 minutes. It's not bad. So we start the install with the client. We have a cup of coffee while it's going, and then get right into introducing the reports and how they work and getting them going. So it's a fun work session, and now it's installed and authenticated on a user that's there. And then you can package and share reports from your environment to theirs.
Oh, this is important because again, mostly our users are not willing to do anything by themselves, especially not doing reports. They just want to take it a package, right? And I believe we will do it and then we'll use it. That's why I was asking if we can create it in-house, right, in my sandbox and push it to them. But I see that I have to ask the delegated admin and to assign it to Power BI license and then to create the reports, right?
Yeah, I have one comment on that. If you're going to do that, make sure that you parameterize the environment and the company name in your Power BI model so that you can deploy it and just quickly copy and paste in those variables for data connection and refreshing.
I know in the model that with the open source models, the company and environment are already parameterized.
Yeah, thank you.
I got another question about the Visual Studio Code. I'm gonna steal screen share again and close the loop on that. Backing up a little bit, this is the app JSON in one of my Visual Studio Code projects, and I added in a dependency, and the dependency is on the Power BI reports. I'm going to paste this over here into the chat so that you can have it. Once you paste this dependency and you pull dependencies, you'll get this guy here, and you can click on them and it will list out, here are the tables it installs, here are the pages that it put into place. But what we really care about are these queries. And let's say I like the vendor ledger entry query, but I've customized vendor ledger entries. I'll come down. It's an API type query. I don't like extending them because they break. I would right click here. I use the AZAL DevTools wizard because I'm lazy. And I'll do TMG vend entry PBI API. So I'm going to make my own. And it's going to say API type. I'm going to say finish. And I'm going to come over to this API. And I'm just going to snag the whole thing. Come back to mine. And drop it in. And now I've got my own copy. I don't have all the namespaces in because I'm namespaced. So I'll make an action item. It's going to be a brat. Of course it is. Detected that I'm sharing my screen and it's not going to click where I want it to click. It needs the namespaces, so I add those. But now I could come in here and just add another column, and I'll put currency code in. And now I've added currency code to the API. I can publish my extension and then go back to the Power BI reports, find where this API is used and swap it for this one, and I'll have my new fields. It's a bit of development, bait and switch to create a copy and then swap them, but it does allow you to extend things. At this point, you're going to want to make sure you have a whole copy of the report, because Microsoft updates aren't just going to break your visuals; they're going to break your semantic model. But because they're open source, they're not just a starting point for the visual components. They can be a starting point for more advanced data components if you need to. And this is just one way to extend the model and add the things that maybe Microsoft didn't put in there because it's your customization. These can be fields that are a part of your own extension, and to be able to add those extra bits.
Awesome. Well, I think at this point we've talked quite a lot about the apps being open source. We've kind of showed how to install them. We haven't really shown the back end of any of these. So I think it would be fun I'll share my screen first and then I'll move it over to David and we can kind of do a little comparison, just showing one, the model, two, kind of what's possible when it means to modify an open sourced PIBX file from a PBI developer standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare. I have downloaded the finance app using the GitHub link. So I downloaded the raw file, and with that, I am now able to see all of the different queries here, all of the different measures. And if you take a look at the model view, you can see that the model is quite big. There's a lot here. I was trying to zoom this out and I couldn't get it in the typical sense that I think I usually, that's what I wanted. All right, so still quite long. I know when developing these reports, they put a lot of emphasis on using star schema. So, they spent a lot of time on model development. And if you look at these individual queries, so customer ledger entry, vendor ledger entry, GL entry, GL budgets, you can kind of see what entities they are connecting to and how they are related to each other. So that's kind of the model view. David, do you want to mention anything else on looking at the particular model?
I'd love to, actually. If you go to the, let's say the GL entries page, I was noticing this, right? Okay. I guess two observations. Number one is that when you look at the GL entries here as this object in the model, it's actually, if I'm correct, it's the sum of the income statement entries plus the balance sheet entries. Like, it's a couple of other queries that when you go into in the query editor.
I gave you control, by the way.
Oh, did you? All right.
You want to poke around?
I'll do the best I can. It's a little small. Let's see. GL entries, right? If you do this and then you pop over into the query itself, right? One might think this is going against a GL table. Well, it's actually, if I'm correct, this is the sum of multiple other queries. So it's a merged table. It's kind of indirectly coming into here. So, just to clear up any misperception, this GL entries and maybe some of the other ones, they're actually presenting polished, named columns data that's, reflective of what was in the API call, and response, like Marcel is showing us. But even that is part of it. By the time it gets to looking at the GL entry page, it's actually merged queries, which I thought was kind of an interesting observation instead of going direct to table. And the other thing I thought was, as somebody who I like developing Power BI reports in a layman's sense. I am not nearly as good as the basement dwellers who love working with, formulas and measures and all that stuff. So as I was going into this, looking for some of that already pre-built, because I need a developer to help with that as a report writer enthusiast, there's a lot of that here. For example, like the time intelligence, especially. If we go to like the, it was under the standard calendar time intelligence, right? Balance at date. So a lot of the time intelligence groupings, so was it this one? That change, it might have been one of these. But a lot of the ways that you can essentially build slicers by time, right? Year, month, week, year, quarter, right? Quarter, month. All those combinations are already built here for me, the report consumer, to put on a page that'll auto filter or let me multi-select, a couple of months worth of information. So I thought that was pretty neat. It would save me a lot of time, and I could develop more reports or present more important, more pertinent information, because all of this in the model has already been built, even just for this one GL entries entity. I'm sure it's all over the place.
And it's a neat decision by Microsoft to, and the BC development team behind this, that the queries are simple, and they've concentrated all the complexity in Business Center and Power BI, letting us have that control in a non-compiled environment. If they'd put the complexity in the API, then any change to that requires somebody who can update a Business Central extension, and that's a pro code. Where putting it in here has put it into a lower code environment, and it lets us customize, copy, clone, change, customize, have personal copies of it, and it gives a lot of agency to us in the field to be able to make changes that would be difficult if they had chosen to put it in the API, and it's well thought out, I guess.
Yeah, in terms of putting this much out for so many different areas of the of the ERP system, I honestly can't wait to dig into every single one and get to the point where we may have some open sense, capability for each one. Because the more you can tailor these to each customer, imagine the hundreds of hours of development time they might have saved on each of these Power BI reports. It adds up quickly, and it lets them, they start the race running instead of as a dead stop. And that alone, makes for an interesting journey.
It also fits well into what's called Cunningham's Law. If you sit down with a client and you ask them what they want in a Power BI report, I don't know. I need some metrics and some numbers. No one's aware of all of the cool stuff they could have. If you show them some out of the box Power BI reports, they'll tell you everything that's missing. every field that they don't like and everything that's missing. They'll tell you all about it. and that's my favorite approach, because now we're not starting from a blank screen. We're starting from a point of action. I like this. I don't like that. That's actionable right away. And it lets you turn something around, provide a really positive experience really quickly, because you're talking about action items. You're not gathering requirements. You're picking and choosing and acting right away. And it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. I think one other thing that I didn't mention when it comes to these open source reports. So when you typically install one of these apps, you have the app and then it delegates its own workspace. It's separate. Each of these apps has its own workspace. So you have a workspace for sales, you have one for purchasing, and they're separate entities. As these become open source, you can download the raw file and you can actually then republish them to a same workspace. So for example, the inventory and the inventory valuation, if you just install them, you have two workspaces. If you do the open source and you download them, modify them, and republish them, you can actually put them into the same workspace and then create your own app. So now you have this mega report with all the inventory knowledge that you might need.
Less governance, secure.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you have a lot less maintenance to do when it comes to deploying that for users at the admin level.
Yeah. And then I'm going to go back and share just to kind of show like what's possible. David, you can share yours after. So here is the standard aged receivables page that you get. Like I said, you know, there are some things here that I like and there's some things here that I don't like. I like the links, the format. I think it's very clean and very clear what you're looking at. I don't like the multiple steps with the payment terms being here. I'd rather just look at the customer, their balance, and then maybe look at invoices. So I've kind of copied the page and altered some sizing. I added a secondary table. So if I want to look at Alpine Ski House, you know, I can click on them and I can see the invoices that make up that value. A little bit deeper than if I just wanted to click into Business Central and look. You know, it's all kind of right here. I don't have to move if I don't want to. I also added a parameter because maybe someone wants to just look at what's current. So instead of looking at all these different fields, obviously I have a few little issues here with my second thing, but I didn't develop these, so I'm still kind of getting used to where things are. But, you know, these are just some things that you can do. And then, like David showed, you can actually then embed whichever page you prefer into Business Central. David, I know you ended up altering one of the pages too, if you'd like to show that.
I'm happy to. Yeah, I actually did another one this morning.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's one of those things, once you get started, it's, you know, you really want to take it to that next level because you don't, you get your time back. You know, the sooner you can get efficient with what these tools can give, the better. So I want to know more, obviously. So I'm on the financial one. We mentioned earlier how I think you had done this where we were able to, you know, you clicked up here and I think you got rid of the days payable outstanding.
Yes.
You know, one of the things I had done was got rid of the days inventory. So, okay, great. You know,
okay.
payables and sales, but no inventory pointer there. That was one of the items I did. And then I rolled all the way to the far side over here where you can hit the plus sign and grab onto a new page. And the first page, this is slightly different than the one I showed you, but the reason this specific page layout exists is because it mimics similar to what I have on my my home page inside of Business Central right here. Is I use this feature a lot, my favorite accounts, right? And these are just my favorite accounts. But the Power BI right next door gives me really kind of the same thing, but really all accounts. And this being a custom report that I put in and just republished, now if I see something here on the left and I want to go a little bit further, I can certainly see and do more here by popping in to this page, going to expand and using it essentially right within the window. But the report itself created the new page. It's really just Power BI essentially reporting. I like slicers like you do as well. So this is an example of one of those time intelligence objects that they put out here under date. Here it is. It's standard calendar. Like to come up with a pick list of any one of these combinations of date, time, values, to me really helps quickly hone in on the values in my fact list that I'm aiming for. So, or on this side over here, obviously, maybe I want to look at, any one of these accounts, just like, Power BI does. It gives you, really quick capability to find things. Maybe I'm only looking at customer related activity and I'm only looking in, let's say, April of 2022. Okay, I don't have any based on the data in the sample data set, right? But this is my dashboard that's linked to the same GL entries query we were just talking about. And that's what got me thinking, where is this query really coming from? Oh, it's the sum of other queries, and just kind of scratched a little bit backwards to try to get to what really is going on. And some of the fields that you might want to put on your reports aren't in the table you think they're in. I'm on GL entries and that has the account, but the name of the account is in a different entity. So, they're related through the model, which is a huge benefit to just, being able to associate where, the customer name or the vendor name or the master name would be so that you can complete, your pointed reports. I did another one here today because I wanted to dig in a little bit more on the dimensions. Right, because dimensions and aggregated values are something that's pretty important. The sample environment doesn't have a lot in it, but one of the questions earlier was, could I take this and put it in somebody else's environment? Yeah, ultimately, yes, you could. And if they had 4 dimensions, then your dashboard lights up, right? And you can use that dimensional functionality down there. So, yeah, I like to play with different date time types of things. Even this one would be great because I can pick through here the names of the account categories that are out there and look at like maybe state, sales tax payable, and I can dial it in and pick a particular period, and it's really done inside here, something that might have taken me a little longer in analysis mode. I don't know. We have so many good tools to play with. I'm just glad to have one more.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you're done, the magic button is really hitting the publish button. You do want to make sure that if you're going to keep your changes after working with those locally in the desktop, that you obviously save those, and then you point those out to the workspace, that you're aiming for. So if I hit select, it's going to roll right out there and update both the report as well as the model, because I've now customized the model based on some changes that I had made a little bit ago.
Yes, reminder that Power BI Desktop does not autosave like other Microsoft products, so make sure you save often. It does have an auto recovery feature, but it's not always going to get every single change depending on when and how you crash. So, not that happens often, but just save often. Sophia asked, can you get the tables from different companies on the same tenant?
These reports are all isolated by company, I believe. The data model is.
Yes.
If you publish it multiple times, those APIs will be installed in each company, and you could make a report that leverages the APIs that were provided to build that kind of report. But given the way they're structured out of the box, that's going to be a combination of some pro code peeps and some Business Central peeps to pull that together. It would be a task. It's not going to be a super easy one.
Yeah,
Absolutely, no doubt. But yeah, main point is possible.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I barely ever say something's impossible.
Yeah. I mean, you could possibly pull the same queries in and then append them all together, but it might just be a little bit more complex with this particular model structure.
Yes, I created those consolidated aging reports across multiple companies. Totally, truly doable with Power BI. Works great, especially with slicers. But it's not going to come from this specific model. It would be
absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, overall, I think these reports are really great for users that are interested in getting started with Power BI, or veteran users that are looking just for some quick insights. And then whether or not, this will be applicable to you or your organization, it depends on how your Business Central is structured and if you're highly customized. These are all things to factor in. And as the rest of the reports become open source, you may have more flexibility there if you're not seeing everything that you want. And that can be done through more low-code development efforts or more advanced, like what Marcel showed. You guys have anything else to add? Are there any questions?
Open up to questions.
If
Well, I
not,
went
I
ahead
know.
and I put David Savannah's and my blog into the chat. You can follow us there. There's lots of fun stuff. We all publish often. We're always playing around with things and sharing thoughts and new technology, and it's a great place to follow along. I like to snoop in on what David's doing.
Got a couple coming up. I'm hoping that they're good. We'll see. I get to play with the open source apps with Power BI for a while, so maybe I'll have to do something on that.
And then all of our LinkedIn, Savannah put that up there for us so that if you want to follow us more closely there, we also publish and post out there.
Yeah, and if you'd like to rewatch anything, like I said, it will be on YouTube. I'll be posting the link to my LinkedIn once that is published, and I'll be sure to tag David and Marcel, and give you guys the file if you would like to repost it and publish it to anywhere else. Yeah,
that was fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you two, David and Marcel, can you stay on for a minute?
Sure can.
Sure thing.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.